Hey, we're live. This Life in Tech episode 159. I'm Jason.
The bad guy is back. Fuck you all and you saying that you had better ratings without me. It was because they were expecting me to be on.
And I'm TK.
Listen, I was just reporting the statistics.
Yeah, they were
It
all
wasn't an
waiting for me,
opinion.
and then there was a big letdown when I wasn't there. So I get it. I understand.
Well, we're in it for the long haul, so let's give it a little bit and we'll see.
I got to tell you, I don't know if you all have ever had this, like a bulletproof coffee. You know what it is?
Every day.
I love this stuff. I got on it, a little bit of coconut oil, some butter, tiny bit of maple syrup, and I'm like, oh, I like maple syrup instead for the sweetener.
Don't use the sweetener.
I don't like the sweetened coconut oil, so I just put a tiny bit of maple syrup in there, so that way I'm not getting the other. Because I have a sweet tooth, but I love.
Oh, I can tell.
Wait, here's a pro tip for you. Drop maple syrup, put a little agave juice in there.
I can't do agave. No, it's the same reason why I can't drink tequila. Anything with agave causes me to vomit.
So let's don't do that.
Yeah, I've tried agave so many times, and I just can't do it. It makes me sick.
What he just said is he tried to drink tequila a lot. The local authorities said this stuff's not for you, so now he's got to read it.
I wish that were the case, but I like the taste of tequila, but one drink, it's coming up 10 minutes later.
All right, let's talk some identity management.
Wait, you don't want to talk butter and coconut juice in your coffee?
I will talk about the healthy effects and dieting and all this all day long. What I don't want to talk about is Dan's bodily functions for the next 20 minutes based on his food consumption.
So that's what we'll talk about.
Perfect.
All right, identity management. Where are we going with this?
Go, Jason.
Well,
it was your idea.
Let's think about identity management.
All right, I'll tell you what I because every year when Jason and I have been doing this, there is some industry expert who says this is the year we're getting rid of passwords. Okay, they all say it. I would largely guess that many of them don't have the political power to make it happen. But what I can tell you is that a small little organization where I'm at, by the end of March, our Windows authentication will all be on Duo.
Okay.
So I can't get rid of all passwords just yet, mainly because we've got 117 applications. 5 of them right now, because most of the stuff's legacy that we're transitioning, are capable of single sign-on. So those 5 applications will be able to carry that token forward from the Windows authentication. But slowly, as we migrate these applications to their newer stuff or they're phased out, we will not have as heavy of a reliance on passwords. And then what I'm doing is, and I'm forcing this on all employees. So Duo is a mobile app, and it sends its cryptographic function over, and all you do is click approve. Now where can you imagine I get pushback from the organization to roll this out?
C-suite?
Not at all.
Really?
Nope.
IT guys?
Huh?
Sales?
IT guys?
HR.
I said sales.
HR?
HR? That was my second guess.
HR. So
why?
Because how can we mandate an employee to have a mobile app on their phone? I said, it's very simple. We're paying you to work here. It costs me more every Monday when they call in for a password reset.
Yeah.
And this is safer. It also reduces our risk to being exposed from phishing test because they would only ever get the 6-digit PIN. Or, because I'm saying it's just going to be, the character length is just 6. I don't care if they want letters, numbers, combinations, they can do whatever they want. I'm only going with the password policy for Active Directory to be minimum length of 6, and it expires in a year, because the mobile phone, it changes every 60 seconds. So they've got to get and it's not a text message going there. It's being utilized through push notification system, which is more secure than a text message. And I can't just go and take that app, Duo, and put it on another device. The device has to be registered. It's much more secure than, of course, the text message. I mean, we all know that the phone systems, the cellular network is not it. But HR is the one pushing back, and I said, I don't really care. Now, the great part is that Duo has 2 other backup options. So in the event your phone dies, you forgot your phone, whatever, we can plug in where it will ring their desk phone, so it's already pre-programmed in, or they have to answer 3 security questions every single time, and they get to choose. So if you're not familiar with Duo, when Duo pops up, you got 3 options. You can tell it to remember it, forever if you want. But to me, I always tell it to remember the push to my phone, because when am I not going to have my phone with me? And my phone's always charged. But if not, I had those 2 backup options. And then HR,
Right.
well, we have a couple of employees that don't have a cell phone. And I said, then we have a couple of employees that are liars.
Yeah.
Or you have a couple ex-employees. I mean,
Or
Right.
what are we employing 95-year-olds now?
Right. Even if they are.
Yeah.
Before my grandmother passed away, she had an iPhone. She was, 8, or actually she was 92. She had an iPhone.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like, where's that subset of people that, like, like we work in the Silent Circle, a customer service comes to me one day and I go, there's a guy on the phone that wants to buy a black phone, but he wants to send us a check because he doesn't believe in the internet. Right? And I'm like, okay, I got to talk to this guy.
Yeah.
You don't believe in the internet? He goes, no, I believe in the internet. I use the internet. I don't believe in doing financial transactions. Okay, that's a different story.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not going to sell that guy on the security of mobile transaction thing. Here, mail us the check. We'll send you a phone, right? But I think there's twofold. There's one, what we do professionally, right? And what we mandate professionally. And I like the idea of only changing a password every year, and really starting to talk to people about entropy, right? The old correct horse battery staple password mentality, right? That why do we mandate? The government's bad for this. Is every 45 to 90 days change the password. So what do people do? They write it down. They do stupid shit with how they rotate around passwords, right? If you have a good solid bomber password and you use some measure of 2-factor authentication, I go with don't use texting, right? Either use the Google for the consumer world is use Google Authenticator, use Microsoft AWS, one of those authenticators, so you're not using Texter, because the cryptographic transactions much more secure, and it changes every 30 to 60 seconds depending on what app you use. But I recently just got a YubiKey, and they make one now that has a Lightning adapter on one side and a USB-C on the other. Tell me what I can't plug into with that, right? And
yeah, YubiKeys are great,
right? And it's just like, but selling people on this idea of 2-factor authentication, we're slowly but surely doing it, right? Google, I think, is going to mandate it, right? Just as a function of, especially when it comes to like G Suite, they're going to start to say, hey, we're not going to let you get away, and you can use your phone, as a second factor of authentication and things like that. But we're finally moving, I think, the consciousness of the world out of solely convenience. And does anybody here think that the Google Authenticator app is really harshly inconvenient? Right.
Oh.
And so the tech, it's like I've got the tech problem and I've got the social problem. And I think with regards to identity management and more importantly security, we're kind of meeting in the middle, right? And I think my son's 21 and he like that doesn't bother him to have to do that. He's like, okay, I get it. Why? Because he's got a bank account now and he doesn't want his money to go missing.
Right. And that's a big thing. So I when I first got to the credit union, one of the things we did very quickly is I put on a phishing test to see, how well is the training, blah, blah, blah. And we got like 22% of the folks. And most people want to go in and they want to go start making fun of them and all this kind of stuff. And, especially the guy, those in IT, they started doing that. And I said, why are you making fun of them? I said, one, it's not so much that our phishing tests, look like illegitimate. It's that the real, phishing things look like legitimate mails. I said, we just had HR, send out a notification for a party, and what's it have in there? It's got a link, and it's coming from an external source because they're using something. So our real legitimate emails look like phishing emails as well. How can a regular user who's not trained in this mindset really, really get it? So,
well, and they're not paid to be. They're not paid to be.
Right. And so I kind of I ridiculed my folks that were making fun of them. But I went and talked to the users and to find out, why? What's the triggers, blah, blah, blah. So then I took on, at that point, because those that were giving the new higher employee training for cybersecurity and all this kind of stuff, they weren't hitting on the real points. They weren't making it real to them. And so a lot of people will say, well, I don't really have anything someone would want. And so I say, do you have $100 in your bank account? Well, yes, of course I do. I said, well, in Ukraine, it only cost $200 a month to live great. So you just paid, if I could take your $100, you just paid for someone to live for half a month at an amazing lifestyle. Now, but what are you going to be in the future? What are your connections going to be? And now it starts to go, oh my gosh, well, if I don't want $100 because if my $100 is taken, because most people don't even have $500, they couldn't. What are the studies? Most Americans could not handle an emergency of $500. Well, you start getting real to them. I went through and I played the game of let me guess your security questions and talked about why Facebook is so bad. Because I can't get all these things because you tell me what your dog's name is on there. I know what your mother's maiden name is. You put where you were born. All the things you put there. I said, this is why Facebook, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes off because I made it real to them. And then I give them the things of, hey, you should probably be using things like Ghostery because Ghostery is a pretty easy plug-in for most people to do. They can't necessarily go as extreme as Privacy Badger or
NoScript.
Right. Yeah, they can't get to that point. But Ghostery is pretty easy. So I told them about this and why cookies are bad and now and they're starting writing it down. And I'm like, look, call me with any questions, even if it's for your personal computer. I want to make you all better. And they do. They call me, they contact me, and I help them out because now they're taking their own digital hygiene now more seriously.
Well, that's what started this week. I started thinking about identity management. Here's why. Check this out. And so I had given an assessment to one of my classes, and it had to do with authentication. And long story short, it dawned on me that perhaps the vast majority of the public thinks that biometrics actually store the biometric in its biological form, not in some digital form, right? You follow what I'm saying? What's that?
You mean it doesn't? We don't yet have of identity?
No.
Oh.
And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, shit. I mean, so if you're in a situation where you think like if you use a fingerprint scanner, that it's actually the fingerprint being stored, or it's being stored in a way where somebody can reconstitute the fingerprint as a fingerprint. That's a massive misunderstanding of how the technology works. And then I started thinking more about, we've talked about this before. Then, like this concept of identity and how it's managed probably doesn't make sense either to that person. And that's what got me thinking about it. Like, we've done a massively bad job of explaining how a computer comes to know that it's you asking for some resource. And what that means,
I hear you. Because one of the, the guy, I've sent you the links before. The guy Chris Murphy on LinkedIn, who's a big, authentication person, and we have these debates about direct assertion of identity. And I don't think he really understands still after a couple of years what I mean by that. But where he is on to is that the computer doesn't recognize presence. Even if I have multi-factor and I have all these things, it's still something else interpreting that it's really me because of presence. And that's why I keep going back. Well, if it was a direct assertion of identity, then you actually have proven presence, but we don't have that. Like there's nothing, biological that's really there. But the amount of companies that want to say they have single sign-on is mostly false. What they do is, do you have Active Directory? And I still have to put in my Active Directory password, and then it just does a check. So it's just comparing, the hashes outside of there. Well, the problem is if you utilize multi-factor for your Windows logon, those products can no longer look up an Active Directory because Active Directory is looking for this other piece and it won't work. So companies, and this is big in the financial world, Fiserv does not support multi-factor authentication today. They will not have it available until late summer, early fall of this year. How can a company like Fiserv, so for those who don't know, Fiserv, FIS, Jack Henry, they are the largest providers of what we call a core, which happens to be where every financial transaction basically takes place. That's the most, you're talking like everything about your financials are in these things, and none of them, I don't know. Fiserv is the largest, and it doesn't support multi-factor authentication. It doesn't even support, so I talked to their lead guy, and he's actually pretty smart. We actually went through the whole stuff because, of course, the salespeople go, yes, we do, yes, we do, yes, we do. I'm like, no, you don't, no, you don't, no, you don't. So they get me in touch with the guy who actually is leading it for Fiserv, and he's like, look, we don't. You're absolutely right. We're building our authentication model based on OAuth and the Open ID Connect standard. So you can basically, if it conforms to that, you can use anything. And we're on target to be in the release that's coming out, late summer, early fall.
So into Q2.
It'll be Q2, Q3. Because if it's in September, Q3. My guess is it'll be September because they put out their patches. Guess when all the new tax code stuff laws are there.
Yeah.
So that update, my guess is it'll probably be in that update just for convenience. Even though this guy, he's like, look, we have to do this across all of our product lines. I mean, this is not like, we can't just put it out for one product. We got to put it across all. So I get the length of time and the things, but I kind of go, we've been using multi-factor authentication in financial personally almost for forever because of debit cards. So for those who don't get it, Your debit card is multi-factor. It's something you have, and then your PIN is something you know. So why haven't we put that to everywhere in the financials institution?
Well, right. Yeah, exactly. And you guys tell me what you think. Because, I spend a lot of time thinking about the design of systems, like from first principles. And I think we would all agree, if we were building something right now for the future, we would build it such that the system can know who you are in some way, and you can know that the system is the system it's supposed to be, right? But like the internet itself wasn't founded on that principle. And so it makes me curious about the mindset of when you're innovating, why the thought wasn't put into, how do I know who I'm connecting to?
Right. So Jason, we all know what first principles design thinking is, but maybe our audience does. So why don't you just quickly, what is that?
Well, what it is to me is, so you can look at it two ways. So one way to express it is through like a threat model. And so a threat model is easily expressed this way. I have a system. I have use cases or uses for which somebody uses that system. What are all the ways in which it could go wrong? And all the ways it could go wrong from a basic level, just from using it. So by nature of that system existing, that's the first principle. And all the things that could go wrong around that. And so in this case, like knowing who you're talking to when you're going to talk about certain things, to me, is as close to a first principle that we can talk about when we're discussing identity management. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I would expand it a little bit because we all know of my disdain for Elon Musk. Right. I think this guy is a joker. Right. We all know that. But I will tell you this: when it comes to SpaceX, that is a great example of first principles design thinking. What he did in building his rockets, he said, you know what, I'm not going to go based off this old Apollo model-like thing that's been going on for years, which is iterative thinking. He said, knowing everything we know about space travel, how would we do this today based on all of the things that we know now? and as if we were inventing it for the very first time. So
exactly, and that's it. Like, what is space travel?
Yeah. Right. And that's what I think he's done quite well with that. I don't think he took that same principle, in my opinion, with Tesla. In my opinion, but and Tesla's very overvalued as prime to go ahead and short that stock now. But SpaceX, he did. That's a good example of first principle design thinking to me.
So think about it this way: most, almost exclusive, one of the most exclusive clubs in the planet is the number of people that have been to space, and the people that have thought about getting them there. Okay, it's not exclusive. Tool bags that build cars, right? And right, I mean, everybody has a driver's license. So.
Well, clearly not. Otherwise, we would have these voter ID laws.
Okay, stop that. Just stop that right now. See, Jason, I'm trying. I swear to God, I'm trying to keep it on the rails today.
And you saying everyone has a driver's license is racist, apparently. Just so you know.
Oh, please stop.
There's a reason why I always situate you in the middle of both of us, TK.
Please stop. I just need to start having a referee shirt when I show up here every week. But think about this. Everybody can quantify what driving is about. And so to make some big quantum leap away from four wheels, a steering wheel, and everything else, I think is a much more dangerous business proposition than saying, hey, how do we quantify space travel? Now, we've regressed. We went to the moon with less technology that's in a G-Shock.
Did we, though?
Right?
Fucker's trying hard, man.
He's trying. Right? So we went to the moon with less technology that's in a G-Shock. And we've gone a lesser distance with more technology ever since. Right? To the point where we no longer launch people into space. Right? Now, this is.
Have you think we don't do that because of cost?
Well, there's a political aspect to it, obviously, because we're using public dollars to get there, right? Mm-hmm. But this is NASA's thought process, and I got this from an astronaut. NASA right now, I would say, although it wasn't said to me exactly like this, but if you listen to the structure, they have two groups attempting to say we're building something that we can go back to the moon on as a stepping stone to go to Mars, right? And that's the long-term thing. We got to get back to the moon, but then we've got to go to Mars. And do we have to put some sort of space station or something in a moon orbit to lessen the distance to get to Mars? And how do we do that?
Why do we have to go to Mars?
What's that?
Why do we?
Because it's next, right? As primordial lube, we came out of the water, we started walking on land, we went over the mountain, we created fire, we looked at the next hill, we got on a ship, then we built planes and we went out into space. We're on a glide slope and a trajectory of exploration that, through what I believe to be largely idiot political moves, have slowed us down, right? And it's the old Star Trek thing, right? Eventually we're not going to be voting as United States citizens, we'll be voting as Earth. Right? If certainly not in my lifetime, unless I live another 155 years.
It might be 300 years.
But you understand what I'm saying, right? And that's we've lost that largely, and this is TK's opinion, is because we become selfish, right? And if you look, I mean, every day of the week we're talking about how bad Russia is in the political sphere and everything. But guess what? We fly astronauts back and forth to Russia so we can get to space, right? And we collaborate on how to do that better, right? So NASA has said we've got two big buckets we're putting our hopes and dreams on. One is SpaceX. Move fast, make mistakes, recover, and then get back out there. And by the way, we're recovering rockets on a postage stamp when you think about it as the size of what we're doing, right? And so that would win, right? And that should win. But Boeing's still in the mix. Right? So because old stable government contracting, iterative thinking, they know slow and stable will eventually get them there. But they are now saying, hey, we're going to put it into two different buckets. And didn't SpaceX just launch that rocket wasn't that a SpaceX rocket that went up to go bring some, luggage, food, and toilet paper to the space station, right? But that's the thinking that you got to change in everything, right? And that basic design model of, do I want to, what's the risk financially, right? And again, this is MBA, to me, MBA 101. What risk profile am I willing to take to change the world, and what does changing the world look like?
Well, from an MBA perspective, what they would say is, if I put my money into space travel, then what am I not going to put my money in? And so what they've done, essentially politically, is say it is more important for us to put our money into military and building all of this up in order to still have this, so that way we can maintain our foreign policy the way they want, and there's no foreign policy, so to speak, in space at the moment.
Right.
It would be, in terms of that that aspect.
We do have a space force now, by the way.
What's that?
We do have a space force now, by the way.
Jason, you stop now.
We do, though. I mean, that's a fact.
I know.
So everyone talks about SpaceX, but not many people are talking about the technology that Bezos has done with was it Blue Origin?
Yep.
All right, and he's supposedly ahead. He's just not in the he's just not in the press. I don't know why. His guy seems to do everything he can to stay out of the press, where Musk is like, he's got to have another something in the media every minute.
See, you know why you don't like Elon Musk? Because he's a better troll than you.
No, he's definitely not a better troll than me. I thought about that for a moment, but no.
Yeah, but right. This is the idea. You have to go at some point. You have to go back to first principles and ask the very core question of, what is this? Is everything we know about this thing, whatever it is, just by its very baseline foundation, wrong? And do we have to start over in a completely new way? And so I wonder sometimes, like, if we ever get to Web 3.0, right, and we get out of this idea of we've mastered the content creation and the content monetization and all that jazz, beautiful. Can we get back to something that actually, from its core all the way up, allows you to know who you're talking to? I mean, biologically, who you're talking to. By its very nature, I'm not talking about something that gets tacked onto it by some provider. By its very nature, you know who you're talking to. I mean, I can see some flaws with that idea. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure some people are going to get their jimmies rustled. But I tend to think it's a good idea.
Well, now you're really driving into attribution, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yes, exactly.
And if you look at, Tor, for example, and that, how it's largely about masking attribution, right? Whether it's location-based attribution, digital attribution, right? And so how do people make mistakes in Tor, right? They go log on to Facebook. Right? And things like that, and say, now I'm going to do username and true name, username, and things like that. We as Americans have this completely unfounded, crazy fear of the dark web, right? And that a lot of Europeans,
and they should, because things do go bump in the night in the dark web.
Well, that's fine, but let's say nothing's all bad or all good. Bad things happen on the conventional internet every day of the week, and good things happen on the dark web every day of the week, right? So let's have an open and honest discussion about what each does, why and how to get there, right? And say, human trafficking, for example, is largely facilitated by the dark web, right? Because we want to mask attribution for all the obvious reasons, right? It's my argument against the Klan, Antifa, anybody else. Is like, if you've got to wear a mask when you're out in public, you're not doing the right thing, or you're not advocating for the right thing, right? And to a certain extent, masking attribution from what we're talking about here, you're not doing the right thing, right? Now, some people are masking attribution for the right reason. They're a dissident. They're a whistleblower. There's all of those positive things that. Now, some people are masking attribution for the right reason. They're a dissident. They're a whistleblower. There's all.
What is that? Dan, what are you doing?
This is Jason. This is why we can't have nice things.
Tell him to stop.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
It was so good. I wanted to do. It's like going back and instant replay.
Get the hashtag monster going. But that, I mean, you master attribution and make people aware of it, and then say, hey, we're using multi-factor authentication in conjunction with proper attribution. Then we're on the way to doing the right thing. But then we have to go, what's the incentive, financially, politically, socially, and everything to make that big quantum leap?
Yeah. So a lot of people don't understand. I think, like to me, one of the primary use cases for Tor happens to be I don't want Verizon, Comcast, whomever. There's no reason for them to know all the places that I'm surfing.
True.
And I want them to be potentially throttle what I'm doing. It's not so much I'm concerned about, because to me, if you're on the internet, you might as well be in public. So unless you have gone to a secure site where you have encryption. Encryption to me is the proverbial phone booth in public. And so for those that don't know, if I'm using a phone booth, the moment I close that door, I now have constitutional protection against, for privacy. So a search warrant would be needed to tap that phone, blah, 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 blah. Without that phone booth, anything I do in public, anyone can take a picture of me. There's no expectation of privacy. Adding encryption means I have said I have an expectation of privacy as soon as I do that. And so that's a big reason why I use Tor in surfing, because I just don't, I want that expectation that the only people that are going to know what I'm clicking on are that site that I went to, because I have enabled that.
And it's why largely whether you talk in the mobile arena or think what the whole encryption, we got to put a backdoor in there for the good guys. Well, it doesn't work that way, right? And it's another reason that there's this constant battle with VPNing, right? I've paid for YouTube TV. When I travel overseas, I want to be able to use a subscription I've purchased, right? And even now, depending on what type of VPN it is, the YouTube and sites like that they're using IP addressing as a way to guess your location, for lack of a better thing. They're starting to get kind of wise to the whole VPN thing as far from a technical perspective, and say, oh, we don't think you're in the place that you really are, right? That's a bigger problem to me, because I paid for the service, right? And again, it comes back to identity management. If you mandate multi-factor, I'm to the best of what we have the capability to do now with expanded authorization or expanded identity management of MFA and whatever, that I've proven to you that I am who I am, right? And I've got a subscription. Why is my subscription limited based on where I travel?
Well, so they're
right. That's a great question. Why do you have to region lock if you're making me log in?
Right.
But they would come back and tell you it's TV rights in the event they have commercials, and because we had to deal with this at XM Radio. At XM, because we rebroadcasted, we had a contract with I can't remember all the different ones. We had a contract with a particular conglomerate, so to speak, in radio. So we would rebroadcast like Kiss FM out of LA.
Yeah.
Well, the moment of the commercial, we had to know what that cue was because of that. Because now we're a national brand, that being rebroadcasted everywhere, we would have to pay for those rights, and that Kiss FM would have had to across all markets, not just that market. And so
but region locking the entire service is lazy.
Well,
you can filter out specific content.
All YouTube or ever would have to do is go, hey, you're coming from a thing, I'm not going to play that commercial.
YouTube does that already. YouTube TV does that already. I'll get some commercial content, and then there'll be other times where the logo of the network that I'm watching will come up and it'll just be music, and it'll say, hey, we're going to return in a second. So they've done the heavy lift to protect those rights, to not have to pay that money in Virginia Beach, let's say, for content that is originated somewhere else. Yeah. Right? So they're not paying for multi-marketed media ad buys, right? why then?
Third channel.
If I've paid for the service, why does it matter where I'm at, right? That's the larger problem. And they're being intellectually lazy about it to say that, hey, I've authenticated myself. And they could say, hey, if you want to be an out-of-region user, you have to identify yourself. And the easiest way right now is a hardware key, like a YubiKey or something like that, because I can give somebody can text me on the Google, I can text somebody what my Google Authenticator thing is if I want somebody that's overseas to use it. But it's kind of hard to manipulate, or it's much more difficult, I should say, to manipulate the hardware key.
Right. Now, this is what's funny about this with YouTube. They're owned by Google.
I know.
You'd think this integration, because Google is basically giving away their, authentication stuff everywhere. You would think they would have already integrated this in.
Right.
The lateral integration's horrible.
Yeah.
It's fucking horrible. You can say the same thing about Amazon and like Twitch TV. Fucking horrible.
It is. And everything always going to come back down to that problem. And I think, TK, you make a great point that, you're paying for this service. And because you're paying for this service, unlike free TV that's done with, so to speak, the rabbit ears on your thing, where that's free and those programmings are essentially being paid for by the commercials, you're paying for a service which is supposed to minimize that service's need for commercials. So they're essentially double dipping. They're getting your money,
well, right, and
the commercial money.
And to me, I'll personally have a good indicator that we're in like a Web 3.0 virtual age type setup when my service, Netflix, Amazon Prime, YouTube TV, whatever, actually recognizes me as a sovereign individual, and it doesn't matter where I'm at on the planet, on the moon, on Mars. I'm paying for access to content, and there's no reason to restrict that content based on where I'm geographically located.
And
the internet doesn't work that way. There are no borders. What's that?
I would say Netflix does do that because I don't have any commercials for any of those things. I'm paying this service. They just limit me to the amount of devices that could be authenticated based on my plan. So, like, I've got
but the content you can see in your Netflix account is different based on the region you're in.
Is it?
There's code. Yeah, there's codes. So through a VPN and a browser, you can load the different region codes in and view different content. Completely different fucking content.
I don't look at any regional stuff through Netflix, I guess.
Well, look at it. Sometimes I like German films.
Yeah.
Heil.
No.
He's not wearing a mask to cover it up. So, so everyone knows this part on Jason. He really wishes it would be up here.
Wow.
But hey,
and there we go. And there we go.
You're open about it.
This is going to be a ratings bonanza.
Jesus Christ. Like I don't know what to say after that, man. I just got accused of being a
Hey, just so we know, so we're all clear, it was TK that accused you, and I just pig-piled.
No. If you have a family member, every time something in German comes up, they're all required to say Heil. They do it as a joke. They all get yelled at in class every time they do it, but they won't give it up because some stuff never gets old. And it's for no other reason than it bothers the teacher.
Oh,
this is true. This is true.
Right. So I'll tell you a funny story about that. So when the kids take German, they all have, if they don't have a name that's traditionally German, they have to pick one to use in class, right?
That's right. So, that's right.
What do you think the number one choice by at least the first boy in the group that wants to get out there ahead of it when his name's Michael, right? What do you think he wants to use?
Adolf.
It's almost always Adolf.
Yeah, and they're like, no, pick something else, right?
Yep.
And it goes back to the old thing, How many young kids named Adolf? Right? 0. Why? For a really good reason. And any parent that does that to their child, you're like, what are you thinking about? Right? To go back to space travel, Gus Grissom, his middle name was Ivan, and his first name was Virgil. And the PR people at NASA was like, all right, you could be Gus. Because they didn't want to use Virgil. And then they certainly in the early 60s didn't want to use Ivan.
Why
So he
would they,
got to be
why would they
Gus.
want to use Virgil?
What's that?
Why wouldn't they want to use Virgil?
I don't know, because it wasn't Bob or Steve or Michael or Timmy.
Okay.
Something quintessential red, white, and blue flag waving. So he got to be Gus because he had a middle name that was Ivan.
Yeah. So this is funny about the whole aspect with HR when we talked about it. Here's another one. So back when I was working for a company called American Wood Molding, we were implementing SAP. For those that don't know, SAP is a German company, and the guy that we had was definitely from Germany. That was helping with the implementation. So one day, he replaces my nameplate that has my name and title, and he replaces it and it says Der Führer aller Neets, the emperor of the network, right? HR went like ballistic, and I'm like, it's a translation. Like, what do you mean? Why is this such a big deal? He's like, oh my gosh, it's German. It's like, this is what it translates to. Der Führer just means emperor. Like,
What?
but
that comes under the heading of too soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only, this was 2000, so 50 years later.
Yeah, there's a reason why they're called chancellors now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
a
Führers.
really good one, right?
But that I could at least say, hey, this is a part of how that the whole net secrets thing came up was network security king is because someone gave me that title back in 2000.
It's like the old joke.
Did they give
Like,
it?
make sure you tell the person that you love them every day, but say it in German so you scare the daylights out of them.
It's a good idea.
Were you given the title or did you take it?
Oh, in this case, it was bestowed upon me. The people chose to make me.
Was it the people or was it a person? Right?
Hey,
That's very
you can make
cool.
semantics, but regardless, I'm not the one that gave myself the nickname, which is all.
You can't. You cannot give yourself a nickname.
Regardless, it wasn't me.
No, you can't give yourself a nickname.
Right, and have you ever noticed those cases where somebody tries to nickname themselves? They're always horrible.
Yeah.
They're like, it's clearly you made that up for yourself. Because it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
For years, there was a SEAL buddy of mine who just went by Big Daddy, and we all called him Big Daddy, thinking somebody had given him that name. He's a big dude. And one day we found out he gave it to himself, and so he instantly became Big Dummy and couldn't shake that for the rest of his life.
Yeah, you can't give yourself your own nickname.
No. And trust me, if you do, the one you're going to be given after that is going to be considerably less attractive to you wanting to use that in public, I would say.
Yeah. So this is like
Yes.
so
Yes.
my young security analyst, I'm telling her a story about all these people and how they got their nicknames, stuff like that. She's like, well, I want a nickname, and I'm like, no, you don't. It just doesn't happen. So she talked about it again a couple of days, and I said, well, as of right now, I said if I had to give you a nickname, it would be Sniffles, because you've called out sick a bunch of times, and we're in New York, and so those that don't understand, that's what Lou Gehrig used to say to Wally Pipp after he took over, because Wally Pipp got sick. And so when Wally went to the manager saying, hey, I'm ready to play, Gehrig said, sit this one out, Sniffles. Well, a few months later go by, one of the other security analysts is like, hey, what's that nickname Dan was calling you? Sprinkles? And as she's telling me, I was like, there just became your nickname.
You should have
The name happens, and you may not want it, but
You should have called her Mika 3.0 and then done nothing to explain it and just let her live with it.
But so now she Sprinkles, and my CTO and other people, that's how they refer to her now, as Sprinkles.
That's awesome. That is
So it's a good nickname because it's natural.
And the thing is, it actually does fit her personality, and she's had to basically sprinkle fairy dust on a lot of crap in order to get this stuff done. And she's got everything from she's handling our patch management, how we're giving out Chromebooks. She's just figuring this stuff out, vulnerability management, and she's sprinkling that fairy dust on a bunch of garbage and has turned it into stuff that's actually usable.
See, and that's the way I take it. If you're gonna take it upon yourself to give me some nom de plume that you think is clever and funny, I don't care what it is, because you're talking about me. Just keep talking about me.
Yeah.
Just keep talking about me. You know what I mean?
Except Adolf. We're not going.
No, yeah. No. See, my German name was Ludwig,
What?
and not like Beethoven. Ludwig,
Oh, Ludwig.
and not like Beethoven, like the Mad King.
Perfect.
So here's another thing, because so people don't know, and some might know, but Jason got called Ninja because of when we were in class together in our doctorate program. He put up the symbol for ninja, and like people never really got it. Well, eventually over the years, Jason started calling me Shogun, and we were like, what? From martial arts, and then for whatever other reason, right? So here's the funny thing. Here I am now graduating with my MBA in a couple of months, and Whistle Pig, which is by all standards the top rye that's on the market. Their Boss Hog changes every year, and this year's Boss Hog's name is Boss Hog Samurai. And so I thought that was quite interesting as to how some nickname things happen. Here I am graduating. I'm trying to figure out, am I going to, for my gift to myself for doing this, like, what am I going to go spend some money on? And the guy at the local liquor store is like, look, don't spend that money on Pappy. Because I'm like, look, I'm going to buy a bottle of Pappy Van Winkle, which is, for most people, that's like the top bourbon out there. And I've had the 10-year, and I'm like, look, what's out this time? They've got a 21 and a 17. He's like, look, don't spend $1,700 on this. He's like, I can get you, 3 things that are going to be considered much better, in his opinion, than the Pappy 17. But one of them happens to be, the Whistle Pig, Boss Hog, and this year's is Samurai, which is like, $500. You're like, why are you going to spend that much money? I'm like, well, I spent $170,000 on my MBA. What's another $1,000 as a gift?
Hey, TK.
Yes, sir.
How often do you buy? How often do you buy gifts for yourself?
Stop.
Hey, I that way I'm getting exactly what I want, and I am not ashamed to say it.
I don't.
Oh man. I've been talking to Ian off and on, by the way. He says as soon as his house is done, he's coming back.
How's that intellectual thrust and parry going?
Conveniently, when I ask him, so when's construction going to be finished, that's when he stops texting me back.
So
He can't
the psychology thought behind us is the maybe tomorrow syndrome. Right? I don't want to do something, so when am I going to do it? Maybe tomorrow. Right? And
right.
I mean, we have a better chance of getting him on this once we start doing the podcast at noon.
Not a big fan of it.
Well, I mean,
no, we're adults. We're a big fan of the morning. I tell you, just that alone. You have a toddler in the house, and you're angry about having to get up early. Megan is a saint. I mean, she's got multiple kids in that house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem is
I get up. I don't want to go.
The problem is that one of them won't stop eating crowns.
Well, he's born into it.
The man's not even here to defend himself, gentlemen.
I did.
When has that ever stopped us before?
I know. This past Christmas, I saw a crayon making kit on Amazon, and I was like, I need to go get that. It's the lifelong snack machine for Ian.
Oh,
Ian. Yeah. Once he woke up, he was pretty good at the show.
Yeah.
Once he woke up,
besides
about halfway through, but
aside from just the chronic stream of F-bombs
from Ian.
Yeah, I know.
So what he has to do, like this is the funniest thing. This guy, it does, so the last time Jason, Ian, and I were all together, we had a significant amount of whiskey. 2 of us showed up at the office at 8:30. One of us didn't get in until noon. I'll let you guess which ones were which.
Well, it's the same as when I was up there. 3 of us went out. 2 of us showed up on time. 1 of us was glad I wasn't up on the day of speaking until 1 p.m.
Yeah, and then when the other person, Ian, he gets in, he comes in and he has like 2 coffees they're basically espressos, and he's just downing them in order. He's like, I don't remember what he always would say. It was something along the lines of, he's just not capable of doing anything until he gets all this caffeine into him, so we can actually start thinking.
Hey, listen, he got a little roughed up that night, man. I don't blame him for taking.
Yeah, and physically, he lost being the my apprentice. I mean, I told him that's what he is. And then he wanted a rematch.
I have a limit to how much I like being touched, and I reached that limit that night.
I've got it on video. It's great.
Yeah.
I don't know about the touch part. I mean, there was, everything was, he was being touched like kind of like the TSA, security checkpoint. Everything was.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wasn't a pat on the back. Like he was trying to push me around. I mean, let's be straight here. He wasn't like hugging me. I'm fine. Yeah, sure, man. Brotherly love and all that.
When he gets drunk, he turns into Chris Farley. Brother's got a hug.
That's not what
he wanted.
Oh no.
Yeah, he did. He wanted to work some things out, and I'm happy to oblige. That's fine.
My problem is I go nuclear. Like, just stay away from me. We're not going to be gradual about what we're doing here. If you're going to force my old ass to defend myself, I'm going to do it in a way that's inconsistent with being friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to have to pick you up off the ground and buy you a drink or something so we can be friends again.
But look, Ian did not need another drink being bought for him that night.
No, he did not. No.
No.
I just let him hug on me for a little bit when he wants to get a thing, and then I was like, okay, that's enough. I did everything but grab him by the ears so he could look at me, and I go, okay, that's enough. And he's like, okay.
Yeah. Potato head. He says, I'm a potato head right now. I can't do it.
Yes, you are, and that has nothing to do with the alcohol.
I tell you, a guy that's just a workhorse, though, at work.
Oh, yeah.
He puts out some great work. I mean,
he's got big shoulders and he can lift some heavy shit. Yeah. You know what I mean? He doesn't mind putting in a good day's work. It's just when he wants to start and when we want to start, sometimes they're two different things.
Well, some mules are stubborn.
But that's why he and Stoney were a great combination working together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stoney gets up.
I'll tell you when I was
he's a hillbilly from the Hicks of Virginia, and they have to get up when the sun's working. So he works by the sun. So
right.
We work. Sun goes down, he stops, and Ian starts working when the sun goes down.
Right. So we function 15-hour day out of the security department.
It's true.
When I was designing the private cloud for my lab, I called Ian. I ran what I was thinking and the gear I was going to bypass him and got his input on it, man. I trust him.
Yeah. I think, fortunate for Ian and a lot of people at the office at the time was how forward-thinking Stoney was at the time about that, where he had, been doing the CSSP, managing a really robust network setup for a company, and said, hey, I think this cloud thing is going to catch on. And luckily, living in Northern Virginia, there's, at the time, there was an AWS event every night. And he just started going, and made it his hobby. Right. And then turn that passion into a living. And then was probably one of the first people when we started talking, hybrid clouds back when we were talking about them, where, hey, I've got something on a terrestrial network that I don't want to put out in a cloud network because a lot of people didn't fully understand that. How are we going to connect those things together? And Stoney was like, look, hybrid networks are going to be, hey, I've got Microsoft over here and Amazon over here. They have to be able to talk to each other. Right, and went out and got his Azure certificates and got Ian excited about it. Right, and I mean, Stoney was doing some work for us before and recently, and I had to tell somebody, I go, when he starts talking, don't let the accent fool you. That guy's a resident badass when it comes to building cloud environments that are secure, and he just flat out is. Why? Because he's passionate about it.
And just because one of the number one issues between disparaging cloud systems like going Azure or Amazon, authentication. Yeah, no doubt. You have to build that bridge for those two cloud systems to be able to authenticate, so you're not having multiple passwords again. Right. It's funny because we had talked about, I think we were talking about when we did our predictions for 2020, 2021. One of the things we all agreed on was that we think Microsoft is going to take over Azure.
take over the cloud computing space and be number one, and that Google will end up being number two. I just read an article this week where Google was stating that their goal is to basically overtake Amazon, right? And do that.
Damn, I'm just amazing at these predictions. It is.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, Nostradamus. Right. The good thing is you're extremely humble about it. When I was in the middle of giving you a compliment, it apparently wasn't good enough. So you had to give yourself a better one.
Hey, I'm just trying to make sure from you all from talking last week about how I'm my biggest fan. I just want to make sure you all are right.
Oh, everybody knows we're right. Everybody that's come in contact with the three of us globally knows we're right. But I think is the more and more, like with what I'm doing now, and Cooper's leading the effort on this, is implementing Cloudflare in with some of the Amazon stuff we're doing because of how it manages endpoints and really deals with latency and things like that really unbelievably well. Is the level of security that you can build into that that multi-cloud environment. I mean, if I'm Google and I'm really shooting for the stars, the first thing I want to do is go buy Cloudflare so I can implement how they manage the edge.
It's true.
I agree with that 100%.
And I think Amazon's making some really huge mistakes right now. They're causing so much, I would say, in many ways, negative press because of the Jedi contract.
Yeah.
That it's going to force the government is going to disband a lot of Amazon before they would even go after a conglomerate like Google. They're going to go after Amazon, and they'll force AWS or something like that to be sold off.
AWS needs to stop. And this is why they're doing it. This is, if you think, there's two ways to react to the Jedi contract: is make your legal challenge about being unfair, which is what they're trying to do. If they had won, it would have been completely fair. Now they want to split it up because they didn't win. All right. And it gets challenged all the time. You guys know, you've been in the Beltway, that every one of these contracts gets challenged, big, small, and whatever. So that's not the big deal. How do I articulate, and this is that marketing effort, how do I manage the perception of what we're actually asking for? If they start and they can prove it, and this is why I think why they went the other route, that what they're offering is a better quality service, and B, more financially advantageous to the government than Microsoft, that's how they win quickly. But they're not. Why? Because you're right. I think they've sat on their laurels long enough and let everybody kind of come up to them. I mean, they were the only game in town for a while. And so it was very easy for the government to iterate quickly to use them because they had no other choice. Now they have plenty of choices. And more importantly, that soldier on the ground, that CISO, that CIO, that head of that chief data officer, right? Because that's really what that's coming down to now that we've got the chief data officer. How am I managing where all my data is at? Those guys are becoming much more intelligent about all their options, right? And they're not just being sold options. Like I think in the traditional way of government contracting, we put out an RFP and bring to me what is mine and sell me on it. They're in a daily battle to try to find the truth and keep ahead of it. And I think the truth now is that there are other options, and based on what you want to do, you might be better served by doing something other than AWS, because I think Workers, to a certain extent, is much more user-friendly and much more automated to get the same result than AWS is. And how many AWS people do I need to have, professionals do I need to have on scene to accomplish the same task and sell it that way, right? And if you can't, then just say it's not fair.
Right, and the big thing is that people don't understand is that AWS is really good at their automation and things of that nature. But what happens is if I go AWS, I have to pay for every Microsoft license I need to be put in there.
Right.
And if I'm in Azure, I don't have to pay as much. And so it makes a lot more sense because the majority of the servers in the that are out there are still Microsoft.
Right.
Yeah.
And we build applications on Microsoft for the most part. Not that I like this, because I would much prefer, something being done on Linux so we can actually really tighten it up, but that's just not the way the world is. Doesn't matter what I like. This is reality. And Amazon doesn't have a good way of competing with Microsoft when it comes to this because of the licensing model.
Right. Last time I checked,
Yeah.
the U.S. government's still a Microsoft shop.
It is. It is. And I mean, I don't hear Google complain. Now, IBM, I think, IBM and Oracle, I think, tagged in along with Amazon, but I don't remember that Google was doing so. Google's going after the financial market hard. And in my opinion, they're a more complete competitor to Microsoft than Amazon, because G Suite, you know, for the most part, outside of when you get into some really big financial folks, but then all I really have to do is just give those people Microsoft Office. Not that much of an add-on. I mean, the people in finance and accounting, they need real Excel because of the plugins. There's no plugins for me to do things in financial modeling with Google Sheets at this point.
But do you think that Google's working on that?
Oh, of course they are.
Yeah.
Of course they are.
They
But
didn't-
it's still a complete competition to Microsoft, and Amazon is not.
Well, but I also think the other thing that's going to happen in the inverse is OWA is terrible.
Yeah, it
Right?
is.
Outlook Web Access is terrible, and their online thing, and you know that go anywhere, be anywhere with a connection that Google is, the G Suite is, they're going to have to compete with that in the 21st century. If for no other reason than most every college kid right now, even high school kids, Google for Education. They're used to using that ecosystem of, hey, it just works, it just stores. When we made a decision, and some of it was based off, some of the sales technique I did with the company was based off of what we had talked about here, that if you're under a certain number of employees, why am I going to spend all that extra money? And at first, you know, just kind of the folder hierarchy, the structure of how you set that up, everybody goes back to what they've done for the last 25 or 30 years. And we'd get on meetings, everyone's like, oh my God, what folders are in there like that? I go, what's Google really good at? They're really good at search. So go in that search box at the top of your Google Drive, and here's the name of the document. Just type it in and it shows up.
Yep.
Well, where do I save it? It's saving as you type. And then the collaboration piece of pulling up a document, and you can see who's doing what in real time, right? And now all of a sudden everybody's like, oh, I get it. And I get Google Meet, I get Hangouts, the @chat function, their Slack competitor, right? Their Microsoft Teams competitor. All of those things, if they're not fully mature, at $12 a month, and I don't have to buy a Zoom license or some other, you know, GoToMeeting or something like that. It's very cost effective for small business, and it's secure.
I think it's cost effective even for, you know, right now for any company that's under 2,500 employees.
I'll say this. Go ahead.
So the biggest disadvantage Microsoft has is their Word online, Excel online, whatever,
Oh, it's awful.
will not allow you to open up a document from a network drive,
Right.
or from anything that's really on your local computer. You have to upload it, and I don't have to do that with Google Docs or Sheets. I can and I can map Google Drive as a network drive, but you can't do that with OneDrive.
Right. So I was going to say this, and then I got to run real quick. Whenever I ask a student who wants to collaborate with me, do you want to use the school's OWA online office, or do you want to use Google? They always, 100% of the time, pick their personal Google without fail.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, I'm sure in the background is how invested they are personally with Google, but a huge part of it is just how bad, especially OneDrive, is to manage files.
Yeah. No,
I want to like it.
And you would think that Microsoft with their Delve would have gotten better, but for their algorithm is nowhere close to Google's.
No, they really shit the bed, to be honest with you.
My plan as of right is I will be looking at in 2021, maybe 22, of converting the credit union that I'm at from Office 365 to G Suite. And I'm trying to minimize my dependencies on things like SharePoint and other Microsoft applications, so I can do that.
Isn't Google coming? I can't remember the name, but there's a new service they're coming out. It is a SharePoint-like, you know, environment. That,
I don't know. I haven't.
it used to be Sites. Remember when Google had Sites?
Oh yeah.
It's the replacement for that, and it's it is that creating kind of that intranet office environment where you can go find all things. And I think it'll work out better because just how invested Google is in saying we're the best in the world at search. And if we start with that and we build our ecosystem about our ability for you to natively search for things quickly, they're going to always win. Because most people don't care about the backs of the crap they can't see that the three of us are important about, or three of us find important, because cybersecurity is in part your reputation, right? Most people, I just want to find my stuff and be able to use it easily. And I don't care where it's hiding, on my local machine, out on the internet somewhere. When I type in, I want to see where that document's at. And Google has that down. And it's inexpensive and it's secure.
Nothing is secure.
Well, secure-ish. You know what I mean?
So next Sunday, gents?
Yeah.
Let's get it.
I'll be there.
All right.
All right, my friend.
I'll let you know what the topic is. Have a good Sunday. Have a good week. And I'll talk to you soon.
You as well, everyone.
Peace.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.